reproductive rights are under assault in the United States. And what's worse, the rationale put forth by the Supreme Court to justify rolling back nearly 50 years of precedent, that there's no implicit right to privacy in the Constitution, lays the groundwork for a full court press on a host of other settled cases. Deep Listens is taking action, and we need your help. Of course, we want you to learn about the elected officials in your area and vote in every single election, but we'd like you to consider contributing to the national network of abortion funds as well. The NNAB is a clearinghouse of regional abortion and reproductive health organizations across the United States. Their goal is to remove financial and logistical barriers to abortion access, centering on those looking for assistance and organizing at the intersection of racial, economic, and reproductive justice. You can contribute to the NNAB directly at abortionfunds.org/donate. You can also use their site to locate an abortion fund in your area so you can keep your money local and aid your neighbors. Thank you, and now back to your regularly scheduled podcast. Don't get me wrong, he's a nice guy, I like him just fine, but he's a mouth breather. Hello good people, welcome to Off the Deep End, a Deep Listens podcast where we explore role-playing video games in depth. I'm not gonna lie, lately I've been considering if we ought to swap around some words there and make it be more like a Deep Listens podcast where we explore the depths of role-playing video games. I wonder why. Anyway, my name is Jeff Rude, the host and manual of the planes of this operation. Joining me, as always, we have the unearthed arcana of the show. It's Braden Arbitrary Water Redacted. Hello, Braden.
Hello. I'm here to subtract your armor class from Thaco in order to determine on a table whereupon I hit you with my sword.
Also joining us, what would this show be without its own Book of Vile Darkness? It's Chris Zombie Pie Redacted. Hello.
Hey, Jeff. I want to ask you a question. What is a cleric's favorite hot drink?
I don't know.
Divinity.
That's better and worse than I was expecting from you.
I got one that's worse. I
figure.
Hey, Braden.
Yes.
How do Aarakocra prefer to send their messages? Via Twitter.
I hate you.
This has been a Deep Listens podcast. If you're curious about sending emails, you can send them to... Man, the Book of Vile Darkness is such a terrible... splat book.
Oh yeah. So here's the thing. I remember not to just immediately get off on a tangent, but I remember finding that thing in a Barnes and Noble and immediately being scared away by the fact that it's like, this is for mature audiences because we put titties in this book. And I'm like, oh, how they put boobies in a Dungeons and Dragons book.
They also updated the Book of Vile Darkness for 4th edition. Some people forget about that there's a 4th edition version of that.
Sometimes people forget there's a 4th edition, period.
I didn't realize they updated that book. Did they leave in some of the, let's say, more direct language around sexual assault that's in that book?
What a delightful...
Well, it's funny because the person who was responsible for the update of the Book of Vile Darkness for 4th edition was Robert J. Schwalb, which Braden and I are familiar with because he's the primary author behind Warhammer Fantasy.
Interesting.
Sure. Okay, yeah, that crossover checks out.
For those of you who are not up on your 3.x Dungeons & Dragons lore book stuff, don't worry, we're going to get you there, because on this episode of Off the Deep End, we are going to be discussing Pool of Radiance, Ruins of Myth Draenor. That is Ruin, singular, of Myth Draenor. I suppose the full actual title of this, in some places, is just written in Dungeons of Dragons, Forgotten Worlds, Pool of Radiance 2, Ruin of Myth Draenor.
Yes, the second game in the Pool of Radiance series.
Yeah, it's the only other one. The only other gold box
Definitely
game.
Wasn't a 4-part series that is one of the most legendary adventure, RPGs ever made.
It's up there with, in terms of naming stuff, right up there with, like, Magical Realms of Tir na Nog, Escape from Necron 7, The Continuing Adventures of Hoop Sparkly or whatever. Anyway, great.
Yeah.
Horrible names.
No, this is the fucking, this is like when they made Tony Hawk Pro Skater 5.
Yeah. Yeah, nothing happened.
No,
Do not look behind the curtain.
This is Pool of Radiance 2, the sequel to Pools of Darkness, the sequel to Curse of the Azure Bonds, the sequel to Secret of the Silver Blades, the sequel to Pool of Radiance.
Speaking of bad names, this game was developed by Stormfront Studios.
They had it before the Nazis did.
Yes, they did, and they had a name before that too. Well, trust. I got notes, baby. It was not published by them. It was published by Ubisoft. Maybe you've heard of them, the Rayman people, the Tom Clancy people.
Yeah, they owned Clancy by that point.
The Child of Light people. It was released on September 24th, 2001.
Donald Duck going quackers, people.
Yeah, that N64, Dreamcast. It was on everything, I guess.
It was on everything. It was on literally PSX, PS2, GameCube.
Around the same time as this, I guess.
Yes, that's contemporary.
Released September 24th, 2001 in North America for the personal computer, and a little bit later in Europe, also for the personal computer, also via Ubisoft. That's what we're going to talk about after we talk about other things. If you'd like to talk about other things with us, you can do that very easily. You can join the Deep Listens family. At patreon.com/deeplistens, there are instructions on how to do that, but I'll summarize for them. Give us a little bit of money. Kicking at any dollar amount will get you access to a Discord that is full of cool people. It will also allow you to nominate a game that will go into the slush pile from which we will draw at the end of this episode. That's right. $3 is the floor for that going forward. If you already have one in there, another $3 will get you another one. That's how nice we are. If you've got questions or prayer concerns, or you just want to solicit us for bad advice, you can do that at inquiries@deep.lol. That is inquiries@deep.lol. And finally, if you'd like to see the list wherein we have enumerated the correct scientific ranking of every RPG that is ever made that we've ever played, you can see it. It's up at bit.ly/OTDE rank. That is off the deep end, the first letter of each word, rank. All lowercase, no spaces, no underscores, nothing like that.
I have important news. Weirdly enough, you cannot buy the original 3.5 Book of Vile Darkness from the DM's Guild, where you can buy many legacy D&D PDFs. They have the Book of Exalted Deeds, and they have the 4th edition Book of Vile Darkness.
Hell yeah, they do.
But they don't have the 3.5 one where it talks about
sexual assault,
fetishes,
cancer wizards.
Yeah,
they're like weird. Yeah,
there might be a reason why Wizards of the Coast doesn't want that one.
Yeah, there's a lot in that book that maybe wasn't ever great. Let's not even worry about not holding up.
I don't mean to defend. I don't want what I'm saying to defend this, but when you consider the fact that when third edition came out, they had to like clean out the smut. So is that the whole satanic panic stuff stopped?
No, that was second edition.
But still, like that cloud was still there. It's like, okay, we can't just outright have titties. And then when, let's just say third edition, vanilla third edition was a moderate success, but not the resounding success. It kind of had that weird.
It was a slow ramp.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a slow run. I would say that people really didn't significantly convert from AD&D to 3.5 was basically what finally moved most of the community
and that was
away from AD&D.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the Book of Vile Darkness was kind of like, okay, fine, you won. We're going to put in the boobs.
We're going to listen. We got some edgy shit.
And they
that's
went
really
hard.
what that is.
And that was like an early splat book too. That was like not long after that first set of books came out, right? Like the core set.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like it was attendant to. It was the first splat book and the worst splat book, but maybe not the most broken splat book.
Yeah, well, yeah. If this isn't the podcast for this, but if
No.
we wanted to talk about like the incredibly wide range of quality between various third edition splat books, I could go off for a while.
I mean,
A lot of prestige classes that clearly weren't play tested.
yeah, I never got that. My first encounter with like D&D beyond just like people talking about it was in high school in Hawaii, and it was 3.5. So it was 2004. So
Yeah.
like 3.5 was already out. So like everything prior to that didn't exist until I turned into like a college person into a new hobby and like went all the way horrible deep into things, and
Hell
like
yeah.
bought a copy of the Book of Vile Darkness because like this seems neat, and then like poked around in it a little bit, and I was like, oh,
This is edgy trash.
yeah, I don't want to incorporate this into my play. But yeah, we kind of necessarily get to talk about third edition a little bit in this episode for reasons that will become clear. Before we do, though, I'm told by one of the associate editors of Deep Listens that we have some manner of fan mail. Is that associate editor? I'm sorry. Is that
It's me.
I hear the sound of an associate editor coming on. Is that?
I, associate editor, Zombie Pie Redacted. I have authority. I've got power. I'm going to not abuse this power. I'm going to use it responsibly. Let me tell you, I got a message, a whisper. I think it's the whisper system on Twitch. I don't even know anymore. From someone who apparently saw my Starship Titanic archives and then reached out to me. I'll just read a little bit of this. So it's Swing Set Theory. I saw that you were streaming Starship Titanic 1998 and was thrilled. I did a uni project for Stanford System Sys computational linguistics. Jeff, what does that mean? It's SimSys.
I'm not sure.
SimSys.
I don't know
Okay.
what programs in Stanford are or do.
Okay. Here are
Simulation systems. Sure.
my paper was about the reverse engineering of the NLP and FMV dev and actresses in the game, and Adams's influences on the design of the game. And then they proceed to kind of talk about why the game was designed the way that they did. I then directed them to Deep Listens. They apparently listened to the previous 2 or 3 podcasts and said, quite good, really enjoy it. And here is their question. So the first one of these is related to the last podcast that we recorded for Legacy of the Wizard. Still slightly confused about this supposed line of mediocrity. You and Jeff both say that you have a hard time ranking games that are older as being below the line of mediocrity, whereas you feel more comfortable ranking games that are, in quotations, modern below it. Also, is now Legacy of the Wizard the line of mediocrity, or is it below? Because you continue to refer to the First Age as the line. This is actually a good question. So the first part here is, do we give a gimme to older games to not be above or above the line of mediocrity? And I think with Legacy of the Wizard, the reason why we said that is because it took some risks. Almost all of those risks led to a not fun video game time, but they tried something out, and you kind of have to give them credit. And what they did, probably using the technology that was available at the time, not an easy thing. Also, yes. Do either of you have anything else to add?
I think to some extent, I think we are we like to talk about, historical importance, right?
Yeah.
And so in that sense, I think we do give, games that at least have some level of historical merit a little more of a wiggle room. I think I'll say about Legacy of the Wizard is I'd rather play it than play the Third Age again. Because at least Legacy of the Wizard has like variety. It's trying things.
Yeah.
Jeff,
It's got Yuzo Koshiro music.
I am
Which we
looking at
forgot
where
to
we
mention.
ranked that game now, and I am like, wait, why did we do that? And the answer is, it's lost to time. No way of knowing the ancients and their way of thinking, how they could have assigned such a list and such a place upon said list. Literally
If
no
only
record.
there was a recorded podcast.
We'd have to check the Deep Listens Federalist paper equivalent to suss that out. Yeah, but no, actually, I'm looking at that and I'm like, I might play Legacy of the Wizard before the Third Age again. Here's my actual response as someone. So, like, we do this show, and then I've been involved off and on with the Hardcore Gaming 101 top 47,858 games of all time podcast since before it started. So 2016, late 2015. So I've been talking to those guys for like 8 years. And list making is kind of an inherently silly thing. I think where lists are kind of interesting are like the top and the bottom. I think when you're looking at a list with, like, even in our case, you were like 35 games on it, and you're in, like, you know, right dead center at like 17. It's like you wind up with things that are, like, by nature of you putting them there, they feel kind of unremarkable, right? So it's like, which shade of gray are you fond of? Like, which eggshell, you know, semi-gloss paint are you fond of today, right? Like, everything between, like, you know, the 11th and, like, 20th spot in this list is kind of fungible to me. Which is not saying, like, I don't care about... Like, I look at every one of these games on here, it's like, you know, NBA 2K16 and Legend of Dragoon, like, you know... I'm looking at where Legend of Dragoon is on this list, and I'm like, that should go below most of the shit on here. That might go below, like, the Super Spy. I really didn't fucking like that game. But, A, took 3 people to put it where it is, and B, does it actually matter? No. Like this is, like, the problem with lists, right? Like, it once you start caring about it, you turn into a scary person, which begs the question, why make it anyway? And the answer is, I don't know, I'm just having
People
fun
like
because I'm
lists.
gonna
I hate
die
to
in,
say
like,
it.
50
I
years.
keep sending you
like
2
lists.
listicles. I keep sending
And
you 2 listicles.
I feel murder in my heart whenever you send me a fucking listicle that's like, top 10 cutest girls in the Tales series. And I'm like, no, this was written by a robot. I hate you.
Yeah, you know, I mean, CNET and Red Venture Media's drive to try and make that AI generated, it's gonna give us more lists, and I'm all here for it. I'm here for it.
Like, you know, like I said, I'm going to change my tune like every 30 seconds about this because I continue to macerate this idea. Where, like, the Third Age... I think the Third Age is, like, such a perfect mediocre game, in a way, because it is gray all the way through. Like, it is, like, exactly one note. Sustained. And it's, like, not a very good note, but at the same time, it's, like, literally Sir Ian McKellen and, like, movies I grew up watching when I was, like, in middle school. So, I don't know, maybe this is, like, the way that people older than us are poisoned by fucking Ghostbusters. Gets the Lord of the Rings, like, some sympathy, despite it being, like, a very remedial game. And, like, everything below that is just like, no, something's, like, deeply, deeply kind of wrong here. Which is why I'm like Legacy of the Wizard should go above this. Because Legacy of the Wizards just had, like, a bad idea.
I was going to say the complete opposite. I feel like you pointing out there's something deeply, deeply wrong is the perfect way to describe Legacy of the Wizard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, now I
tell you what, walking all the way back out of that dungeon every single time sure sucks. You know?
Okay.
Never mind. We're good.
Maybe I've reversed my...
Okay, so Legacy of the Wizard now is the lining mediocrity, or is it officially below? You know what? We can deal with this later.
Yeah.
Okay, the second part of their question, the funny fun. So apparently this user is a fan of the Super Nintendo, and they are asked me and Jeff, just as a quick exercise, I was wondering if Jeff and you, 2 people who are noted as giving the Super Nintendo, in quotations, shit for its music and sound card, if you guys could name at least 10 Super Nintendo games that remind you of or peak near the works of Yuzo Koshiro in terms of quality and fidelity. ActRaiser?
Boom.
Yeah. I mean, it's
That's
cheap,
a joke
ActRaiser,
because Yuzo Koshiro
but it's good.
did
Chrono
ActRaiser.
Trigger.
I think the F-Zero soundtrack is very good.
Final Fantasy.
Final
4,
Fantasy
5,
6?
6.
Wait, no. Let's just go with one Final Fantasy, so it's 6.
Yeah. I mean, like, if the question
Donkey
is...
Kong Country 2.
Absolutely not.
If the assignment
No,
is
shut
stuff
the
that is
fuck up.
like Yuzo Koshiro, right? Like, is it like Yuzo Koshiro or as good as?
as good as some of your favorite Yuzo Koshiro.
Because, like, you know, when I think of Yuzo Koshiro, when I think about, like, the guy had range, right? But,
Yep.
you know, let's look at the Streets of Rage 2 soundtrack, all right? Like a dance shit. But yeah.
So, okay, let's set the bar, Jeff. If we're the ones that prefer the Genesis sound card, which is the correct opinion to have, to the SNES card. So, okay, let's set it to Streets of Rage 2. What Super Nintendo games least get to par?
What Super Nintendo game is as good as as the literal best?
Okay,
Genesis soundtrack?
What is an average Yuzo Koshiro outing then? Let's establish that.
Well, that's why
I'm saying that an average Yuzo Koshiro outing, Legacy of the Wizard, for example, is still pretty fucking good.
I think I've overcomplicated this. I'm gonna treat this as picks 10 SNES good soundtracks.
Okay,
which I can
10 good soundtracks
very hastily
that are good.
And we don't even have to name multiple Final Fantasies to do this. Okay.
ActRaiser,
Chrono Trigger.
Let's go with one Final Fantasy, and it's 6.
It is 6. F-Zero needs to be on there. It's very good soundtrack.
Axlay?
Yeah,
no.
Actually, Axlay is pretty damn good.
I don't like Donkey Kong Country. I think that synthy Jeremy Soule stuff just does not hold up at all.
I like the soundtrack from Hyperzone quite a bit.
Yeah. That's a good pick.
I think David Wise does good music. I unironically kind of love Killer Cuts, although I guess, you know, the SNES version of that soundtrack is a little more muted.
I think you could put Donkey Kong Country on there. It's impressive the range they got out of the thing.
Sticker Brush Symphony, motherfuckers.
Yeah, I guess I'm saying ensemble for those games because I've not played really any of them.
We're at
no, it's not
7 or 8, and I'm willing to drop Axlay if you don't want Axlay.
No, the Axlay's fine. Final Fight 3's soundtrack is okay. It's pretty good.
Super Mario World, you might as well, right?
My gripe with Super Mario World is there's like 3 minutes of music in that game. It's like that's my only complaint. It's not like it's bad. It's like, you know,
there's not enough of it.
Some of the most instantly recognizable video game music ever written, I suppose, in there.
And this is where Earthbound fans start shouting at Jeff and I, to which we say, "Shh, that game's not actually that good."
Okay,
it's
but
music.
I like that Earthbound soundtrack is just like fucking
super grating and annoying at times.
It's just
I'm impressed by the Earthbound soundtracks, like
the Earthbound soundtrack asking, what does it sound like when you're fighting a sentient fire hydrant?
The really insane sample usage in that game. Yeah, okay, Earthbound can be on there. I'm not like crazy about Earthbound as a game, but the soundtrack is that probably rates.
Super Metroid?
Yeah.
You see, I've always thought that game sounds like it's recorded inside of a sock. Like it's it's like so muffled.
I think I'm with Jeff on that one.
I do like the music, but it's so like.
Listen,
it feels like it's
you get warbly, low fidelity synths, or you get the crunchiest.
Fuck! We forgot to say Secret of Mana.
Yeah, actually, there you go.
Seiken Densetsu 3, motherfuckers.
Secret of Mana is
at some point we'll play that.
I can't honestly.
Maybe even Star Fox, even if I don't like Star Fox.
That Corneria theme.
Yeah, that's one good track. I feel like I wish I could say Tales of Fantasia, honestly, but I can't. It's cool that they put a J-pop song in a Super Famicom game. Like,
well, Jeff,
very technically cool, but
we'll just make an effort to play the Game Boy Advance version of that game.
I think it is the version I would play.
The GBA version where they replaced every instance of Ragnarok with Kangaroo somehow.
Pile hammer.
Off the deep,
Look, you're the one who made us play
exploring the
Grandia
depths of role-playing video games. The GBA port of Tales of Fantasia.
There are good games on the SNES, and there are good sounding games on the SNES. It is easy to clown on, though. And that's not cool. I shouldn't pick on people for things they like. You know, like what you like. It's okay.
Unless you like
the Book of Vile Darkness.
Unless you like the Book of Vile Darkness.
No, unless you're going to tell me that the Game Boy Advance has good music, then I'm going to put my foot down on this.
No, the GBA, like the best instances of music on the GBA are people working around that sound chip.
Yes, it must be angrily dragged into sounding like a decent piece of gear.
Otherwise, speaking of Final Fantasy, compare those GBA renditions of Final Fantasy songs to their SNES originals.
Yeah. I mean, I played all the Final Fantasy V on the GBA for the show, and like I was like, this isn't so bad, and then I went and like listened to Battle on Big Bridge, and I was like, oh yeah.
Well, imagine, Jeff. Imagine you're me, and your first impression of the Opera House scene is the GBA version of Final Fantasy VI.
Yeah. Yeah, Final Fantasy VI makes the list of good, except for the opera, which is a real shame. We simply must talk about Rune of Mithranor.
Do we?
I insist.
Yes. Because you motherfuckers, you decided you took the sweet roll. And
Braden, give us 2 good games that were on the grid that we managed to not do. Tease us.
So for
Blue
chaotic
balls.
good, I put Ys 8, Lacrimosa of Dana.
Oh.
And I believe, let me see, what else did I put on here? Honestly, sincerely, genuinely, I would have loved to play Wizards and Warriors because I like that game like a fucking sicko. If you had done Lawful Neutral, I would have done the Temple of Elemental Evil, which will tie conveniently into this game because my overwhelming impression of Pool of Radiance, Ruins of Mithranor, it's the Temple of Elemental Evil we have at home. And that might be a little unfair. Do you want me to do the intro for this?
I was actually just about to say, Braden, I would like you to continue our bold tradition of summarizing in a couple brief, terse sentences. Dungeons & Dragons, Magical Realms of Tir na Nog, Escape from Mithranor, Chapter 2 of the Pool of Radiance.
Ed
saga.
Greenwood's Forgotten Realms, get the fuck off my lawn. It's me, Elminster.
Straight up dog time.
Straight up dog time.
Hey, Braden.
Did that game ever actually come out? Did it? Did it actually come out?
I don't know.
Which game?
The straight up.
It's straight up dog time.
I have no idea.
What's the show about? Summarize this game. We're gonna.
All right.
Buckling
Pool of
down.
Radiance Ruins of Mithranor is a computer role-playing game from the year of our Lord 2001, namely October of 2001. So not a good time for America, freedom, or for role-playing games. 2001 also had several other notable, much better RPGs, such as Arcanum, which we covered, Baldur's Gate 2 Throne of Baal, the expansion to Baldur's Gate 2, and Wizardry 8, which I still maintain is one of the best fucking CRPGs out there. It was developed by Stormfront Studios, the unfortunately named Stormfront Studios, who previously had worked on D&D games, such as the original multi-user dungeon Neverwinter Nights. Not the BioWare game, but like the OG Neverwinter Nights.
Yes, the AOL MMORPG.
Yes.
Am I the only one who has ever played that of the three of you?
It was discontinued in 1997.
I played it.
Really?
Yes, because I had an AOL account, and my parents' internet provider was AOL, and the twilight years of that thing. It was basically by the time that AOL was starting to put it at the front page of their AOL email system. It was basically a role play server, and the number of people who were actively interacting with the gameplay side of things was next to nil. But you would just go in, and I would be dressed up as a dwarf, and I'm a kid, so I didn't at that time have to worry about weird perverts asking me to entertain them in ways that would have brought deep emotional and psychological scars. It was just a bunch of D&D people who were super into AD&D.
Hell
That's when I
yeah.
found out that there were AD&D people that really did not like 3rd edition, which we will talk about.
Well,
this game's
3rd
for
edition
them.
was 2000. Excuse me, sir. 3rd edition came out in 2000, yet Neverwinter Nights was discontinued in 1997.
Oh, I'm getting my dates. Then I was playing a different thing. But no, yeah, it was an interesting thing. It's like considered the first
It's like
MMORPG.
it's like a gold box game, but there are other people there.
Yeah.
But so basically, my point is this developer had experience with the Dungeons and Dragons and with the role-playing games. Unfortunately, after this, they kind of shifted towards being like a licensed garbage house. They made the Two Towers game, which is okay.
Aragon.
They made, one of their last games was a game adaptation of Aragon.
Yeah, it looks kind of like mercenary work after they touched like two. Well, okay, so you're getting into my notes now, but to fiddle in this space, I guess we're kind of rolling here. We're talking about Stormfront. Yes, they made some gold blocks games with SSI. There was this stretch in the 90s then when they were making a lot of sports stuff, a lot of NASCAR, a lot of Mario Andretti. I
like their Tony La Russa games.
They made the RPGs Madden 97 and Madden 98 for the personal computer. They're sports RPGs where you control teams of ballmen doing turn-based. It's kind of a turn-based strategy. You're trying to get this ball down a field. It's kind of like speedball, but there's one.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah, they had.
I already made the football is real time with pause joke.
Yeah, it's good. It's correct. So I like it. They developed the Xbox launch title Bloodwake, which I think is cool. It's not like incredible, but Bloodwake's all right. And then they made something which sure has the feel of an off the deep end game called Legend of Alondar for the PlayStation 2. A name I've seen, but I don't know if I'd ever really looked at the box art till putting this together.
I assume it's right next to Eternal Ring.
Yeah.
In the electronics boutique.
Nasty.
Used game section.
Yum. And then the last D&D thing they touched, which was after this, was your favorite ARPG and mine, Forgotten Realms: Demon's Stone.
Hey, it's got Patty Stew in it.
It's on like everything too.
Yes, it is on the GOG, and it's a totally
serviceable
of that era hack and slash.
Yep.
But yeah, this was kind of, I guess, maybe a send off for them doing anything adjacent to their classic gold box stuff.
Almost as if the development of this game was a fucking mess.
And
so
what a send off.
So before we jump into the game itself, the other weird thing about this game is, unlike every other D&D game from this period, you're from, let's say, the late 90s to, let's say, the mid 2000s. You've got a pretty hot streak of stuff, right? You've got the Baldur's Gate, a very important video game. You've got the Neverwinter Nights, and then you have Neverwinter Nights 2, and then they stopped making D&D video games. But the weird thing about this game,
good.
Yeah, Icewind Dale, hell of a game. Unironically, I like Icewind Dale a lot.
Icewind Dale 2, huh? Icewind Dale 2, I guess, another one to talk about.
Icewind Dale 2 implements 3rd edition better than this one does.
In the context of this game, it's an interesting one, I guess.
But this is the one Dungeons & Dragons game of this era that is not available anywhere digitally. And part of that has to do with the fact that this was published by Ubisoft. So unpacking it, looking through like the line of succession here, basically, as far as I can tell, Ubisoft, SSI lost the rights to D&D at some point, and Interplay got them. and that's where we got Black Isle and, Baldur's Gate. But due to some like legal back and forth and some stuff, Ubisoft acquired SSI and somehow had the rights to publish this D&D game through that connection. It's a weird thing. And this is also around the time that like BioWare and Interplay were very much at odds with each other.
Yep.
And
BioWare was making money off of selling D&D engines, and Interplay did not like that.
And Interplay, and they're, this was back when Neverwinter Nights was going to be a second edition game. There's a loading screen tooltip in Baldur's Gate 2 that says you can import your character into Neverwinter Nights, which that didn't happen.
Which would have been cool if they did.
But nope. But yes, this game, to put it lightly, based on the research I have done, the development of this game was a fucking mess. It changed publishers multiple times, ending up with Ubisoft. Multiple like high-level staff at Stormfront Studios left mid-development. And perhaps most crucially to this story of this game, which we haven't talked about because there isn't that much to talk about. They were forced by like executives oversight or by Wizards of the Coast themselves to go from second edition to third edition. Because this thing was supposed to come out in 2000, and it was delayed an entire year. And you can tell.
You can feel it.
You can taste that cobbled together flavor.
It's the hero flavor of this game is cobbled. Where to start? So let's dig down on like some of the humans here. So like Stormfront, old studio, was founded in the late 80s. As mentioned, made a bunch of sports stuff. They originally called Beyond Software. They went with Stormfront. Again, these aren't bad people, because it was hard to defend Beyond Software in like a legal trademark sense because it was such a fucking generic name. So they made a harder move for their second name, and by golly did they. Yeah, the producer, or at least the original producer on this, was a man named Dan Daglow, who actually founded the company. He had experience making sports simulation stuff and early RPGs, basically for like the mainframe world, like sort of like the academic computing, your PDP-11 kind of deck world, kind of before the advent of desktop computing. Also worked for Intellivision and Mattel for a period before he got kind of poached by EA. He developed what purports to be the first play-by-email game ever, which is called Quantum Space, which was an AOL production, so he hung out there long enough for also being attached to Neverwinter Nights. The last thing it looks like he made was that Spiderwick Chronicles game, which was also the last thing Stormfront made. The writers of this were two people with some supervision. Their names were Sarah Stalker and Ken Eklund. Sarah has production credits on like a good chunk of the Stormfront library after a certain point, either just writing or in like general production work. Ken goes all the way back to like the late 80s, working on like the Buck Rogers game they developed for SSI, so he'd been there for a long time. And he's still kind of in the industry. He's doing kind of consulting work and is mainly focused on like alternate reality experiences and like socially conscious kind of stuff. He made a weird experimental online-ish game thing called
World Without Oil game. Yeah. And he did that with a team of ARG experts. I know Jane McGonagall is another one of the people that are associated with that. It's interesting. I mean, obviously, if they've actually raised money to address the problems that they've addressed, fine, cool, always good to hear. But I've heard some pretty legitimate criticisms of like very little of that game's proceeds actually go to charity.
Well, that's a shame to hear. Also seems to not have been a going concern for very long. It looks like it was active for like a 3-month period. Also worth noting that this guy
The year prior to that, he worked with some Polish company, it looks like, on a game called Terrorist Takedown Covert Operations, which it's a living.
Gotta get paid.
They were kind of working hand in hand with James Ward, who was a TSR staff person. He was apparently one of the people responsible for the original Pool of Radiance, like, tabletop scenario. So, in terms of, like, the people who put this together, and like, not that we were really going to give this impression anyway, but it's not like some act of malfeasance or incompetence on behalf of the people who made this.
It was a not great situation that they inherited. I mean, probably what happened was Stormfront Studios put their name forward, like, absolutely, we're more than willing to make a D&D game. We have this history to go by, and a variety of factors transpired to result in this game that is not good.
No. So when you consider that this game is attempting to be a throwback, I think it makes a little more sense, because it is a turn-based video game when all of the D&D games of the time were in the Infinity Engine and were real-time with pause, and the general tenor of the industry was going towards real-time with pause, which is how you get the Arcanum combat system, or
anything that resembles modern RPGs ever.
Freedom Force, which we will not be playing for this podcast.
Oh. But just to kind of highlight how bad things turned out for Stormfront, like, basically almost all of that Gold Box era dev team, they just up and left mid-development on this game. And one of the credited producers, a guy by the name of Chuck Yeager, is one of the few people that I was able to find.
Heck of a name.
Yeah. Chuck Yeager.
No relation.
No relation. But he was associate producer out of necessity. And the interview that I found of him, he said two things. First off, apparently this game sold really well in its first week. Like, this game did decently enough. This is not the game that basically shut down Stormfront. That's a different game.
No, they lasted another 7 years.
But this game apparently sold incredibly well. It was like the #1 best-selling game the week that it was out. And then word of mouth spread, and they said, we went from #1 to off the NPD list of games in terms of sales in 1 week. So they went from, like, selling 150,000 copies in 14 days to, for the rest of the game's life, for the next 2 to 3 months, they sold 55,000 copies, which brings it to a general grand total within the year of it came out, about 200,000 copies, which, I mean, that'll keep the lights on for a little bit, but you need it to be a little bit better than that. But also he talked about how, I was an associate producer on that game. This is my first associate producing credit ever. I was not brought in originally to be a producer, and I became the producer of this game. And it's funny because Chuck Yeager is now the executive producer of Destiny 2.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
So he went on to actually do some interesting things and still doing stuff. He's a part of the whole Bungie team associated with the Activision side of things. But yeah, so smart people worked on this game and touched this game. It's just a lot of people touched this game. And the people who made it at the start left, and then a different group of people had to, like, unfuck this, and then, like, oh shit, now we need to do third edition.
So the edition part of this, like, for people who aren't abreast of this, like, and like, I guess you could say this even, let's say it in the last 15 years, like, since, like, these generational changes in D&D, maybe from first to second edition, there's, like, it's not like a terrible
there's not
transition,
a huge difference.
But from, like, 2 to 3, and then 3 to 4, and then 4 to 5, there's virtually no connective tissue. There's not really a neat, like, they're just they're adding a +2 instead of a +1. Like the fundamental math of the thing kind of is different.
Like it's worth thinking about that. Like from the release of the AD&D first edition player's guide to third edition is 21 years.
Right.
So that is 21 years of, and that they 10 years later they did second edition, which is an update, but it's not a huge jump between them. And the jump from second edition to third edition was, a huge fucking deal. Like you said, not a ton of connective tissue, like, Monty Cook and the people behind that basically scrapped the entire thing and rebuilt it from the ground up. And we are still dealing with the consequences today.
Yeah, I guess that's something that we have the privilege of foresight, but for the literal millions of people who have entered the tabletop arena or hobby as a result of 5th edition and have never had to make the switch or transition into a different edition, like this was
a big fucking deal.
This was a big deal.
Yeah.
This is huge.
And you can see...
And it was not an easy tradition, or it was not an easy transition. This is...
Like, And it's not even like they had a single product out was the other weird part of it, because you had, like, the entire basic line beyond...
Yes, you had basic expert.
Yeah, and, like, they supported both. They supported
for a while.
Basic Expert a little less, but I mean, there was simultaneously 2 competing products out there.
Yeah, it's almost like TSR
really great
made a bunch of really bad business decisions.
Yeah, it's almost like people lionizing these guys is a little weird. To say nothing of their weird cult.
Like to not even get into like Gygax himself and his weird
or new TSR,
both as a person and as a businessman.
Whatever this new TSR is. But like, just to give you an idea of this was a difficult transition, apparently someone from TSR informed BioWare while they were making Baldur's Gate 2, hey, we're going to introduce this new edition. We're going to give you some of our informational sheets. We're going to give you some of the mechanics. BioWare apparently looked at this stuff, put certain parts of third edition in Shadows of Am, but apparently their reaction to what they saw of vanilla third edition was like, we are absolutely not going to embrace this entire engine wholesale.
Until they were forced to.
In
Neverwinter Nights.
A long time ago, during this thing called COVID-19, we did like a weird one-off tabletop thing that I ran, and it was what it was, but I was using a system called Dungeon World. And I'm not going to sit here and evangelize Dungeon World, but I'm going to say is like some of the difference between second and third edition, I think specifically, is second edition, like there's crunch in there, to be sure, and there's splat books galore and all this shit, but I think it's just kind of points more at a storytelling system in a lot of ways. It's not all too concerned with balance.
And old D&D, you look at those old D&D rule books and, modern retro clones, and a lot of that shit is meant to be modular, like, hey, this is an optional rule. Whereas third edition is like, these are the rules, these are the systems that govern everything.
Yes.
Everything uses the same set of rules.
And it's all, like, everyone shares the same, like, the XP table is now flat for everybody. Like, there's, like, a fairness doctrine sensibility to third edition for people who are like, I think it's bullshit that why is the warrior level 3 already and I'm level 1 as a wizard? And it's like, well, it's because like there's a lore reason why. It's like the actual answer. Because it makes these things
because we don't want the warrior to feel useless after 3 levels, which is what happens in third edition.
It's almost like there was actual balance. But I mean, just like, so all these guiding principles were kind of cast aside instead of for like a very on paper fair thing that was going to be like fair and balanced, right? Like a very loaded phrase. And then third edition went on to famously become very unbalanced, like almost immediately, to the point where they had to put out a revised version of it, like a completely new set of core books 2 years after the fact.
Oh, fuck. The haste spell is so broken, we literally have to revise the entire edition. Yeah.
And they never quite, like, look, you want to have a good time with third edition, not Pathfinder, but like specifically like third 3.5, Cleric is a fucking incredible class in that game.
Yeah, Cleric, or just dip one level into every single prestige class that gives you something cool at level 1.
Yeah, like the fun of third edition is ultimately breaking it.
Nightmare Gestalt multiclassing.
Yeah.
I guess that's part of the reason why, to make it back about Pool of Radiance, Ruins of Mithranor. Like, that's why this game feels like it has an identity crisis, because it's trying to be slow, almost like it very clearly, that's the AD&D stuff, like the slowness of the combat, the mindlessness of the combat.
Yeah.
Yes, the mindlessness of the battles and the health and spell recuperation exercises. That feels like AD&D, like they were not able to get that vestigial DNA out of this. And then you have like the third edition, like rapidity of like, okay, I did one spell and everything's dead. Like there's this weird identity problem with this game where it's like, it's trying to almost be a slow Diablo. Like it really wants to be this slower Diablo with AD&D, but then it has this third edition rule set that causes everything to be a little too quick, a little too imbalanced. Like in the 5 to 6 hours that I played, I feel like I created a monster that was able to kill everything around him, and there was nothing in the game capable of dealing with him at all.
Just to break it down a little bit more, you know, what is the defining aspect of third edition? And it's skills and feats and multiclassing, right?
Yeah, they kind of turned everyone into a rogue, kind of. Right?
Yes.
They gave everyone like an extra thing they can do. Almost everyone.
And the way this game implements that is fascinating, because I read an interview with one of the producers that's just basically like, oh yeah, no, like the engine they made did not work for third edition. And so the way all of this stuff was implemented was because they literally could not implement it any other way. So you don't do any of the stuff that third edition is known for. You don't manually allocate skill points. You don't pick a feat. The game picks your feats for you.
Sure. And
based
also,
on your class.
I think Jeff, you've mentioned this before. This game definitely has the classic third edition problem of, well, I guess you could even say that this has been a problem that the only D&D game to ever truly deal with this issue was fourth edition of quadratic mage linear fighter.
Yeah.
And once the quadratic formula kicks into gear, that mage is busted.
Oh, by the way, speaking of mages, there are no wizards in this game.
Yeah.
There are no druids, there are no bards, and there are no gnomes, because they literally could not implement any of that shit. So you have the sorcerer, because they couldn't implement proper Vancian magic casting. And you have the cleric who casts spells like the sorcerer.
For the record, we should explain Vancian magic, because like if you're not familiar with it, it's kind of weird. But I'll give a point of reference, right? So this all points to the Dying Earth series by a guy named Jack Vance from the 50s. I think we started writing that. But magic as sort of a resource that is sort of like a discrete, finite thing, as opposed to just like Gandalf just magically makes magic appear whenever he wants. So like Final Fantasy 1, if you play certain versions of that game now, it just has a pool of magic points,
including the Pixel Remaster. The Pixel Remaster preserves the original system, which is cool.
It's cool. What it gives you is basically spells have levels, and those levels have slots. So as you start out as a black mage, you have the ability to cast like 4 level 1 spells and 1 level 2 spell. And every time you go up a level, after accumulating so much experience, you just add slots and add uses for those slots. Is it fiddlier than MP? Absolutely. Is there a reason people have walked away from this system? Fucking totally. But it's tradition. Damn it. So and if you don't like that, they have a class for you. Really probably started in AD&D, but it definitely was present at core 3rd edition, called the Sorcerer, which could just do magic whenever. And the trade-off was you had access to a slightly diminished list of spells that was slightly different.
You didn't have a spell book. You had a basic number of spells you knew.
They were kind of like a red mage.
Yeah.
So Yeah, if rather than even try to fuck with that, they just said, "Well, it's a sorcerer. We're gonna just put your
No, it's a sorcerer, and also the cleric cast spells like a sorcerer. Yeah. But
because
we've
they
been
had
dancing
domains,
around
the
this
clerics,
game,
right? Yeah, so they would have had fancy and stuff too, right?
So this takes place in the elven city of Mithranor.
Yes, a Forgotten Realms. I don't know. This game barely has a story.
The one cool thing I will say about this is that, also I like the part where you meet Elminster. He's always a cool character. I feel like he's fallen out of favor in 5th edition in a lot of ways, but it's always fun to see the drow and the undead and like the classic classic villains.
This is a very classic D&D dungeon crawl.
Well, I have to read this sentence. So the one positive review that I was able to find came from Dragon Magazine, which for those that don't know,
state-owned media.
State-owned media. They're owned by
TSR themselves.
Yeah. This is my favorite sentence I've ever read. I like the way the new edition of the D&D rules have been integrated into this video game. In fact, I'm thrilled with the emphasis on drow and undead, because these are the villains we all, as tabletop fans, love to hate.
What that actually means in gameplay terms is
they went with the easiest possible names that can catch your attention.
You can that turn undead ability your cleric has. It's pretty good.
Yeah,
you should use it a lot.
Yeah, it's a. Did I mention that 3rd edition cleric is good?
Oh yeah. By the way, did we mention that the cleric in 3rd edition is the best class in that edition?
Yeah, like
bar
they
none.
gave you one of the most busted things in the game in like the first book for $0 extra. You should just use it. That's before you even get to the Book of Virtues or whatever that first other.
Or like the Favored Soul, which is the sorcerer version of the cleric.
So the story is basically go to this lost city. Hey, yeah, lost city. Go there. Evilness is there.
Evil. And they're trying to use the pool of radiance to do bad stuff.
Hey, Braden.
Souls.
Braden?
Yeah.
What's the pool of radiance?
It's a pool of magical energy.
Okay.
In the original Gold Box game, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons computer product, Pool of Radiance. The first game in the Pool of Radiance saga.
So it's like the Lazarus Pit and the Batman series?
The villain. Yes, the villain of Pool of Radiance is an undead dragon.
Okay.
Which I'm told they actually have in this game.
And I'm sure he's back. I don't know. I played through the first level of the dungeon.
It's really boring.
I was fucking bored to death. Like this game, when you realize that this game is trying to be a throwback to the Gold Box stuff, it makes a little more sense. But removed from that context, it is a very slow, very limited turn-based tactics thing that doesn't have any of the things that people like about 3rd edition.
And you say it's an undead dragon, but I'm gonna tell you what, for me, I think the problem is it would have been an invisible dragon. We have to talk about this product in terms of its
yes,
technical omnishambles.
Yes.
Is it my time to shine now?
I mean, I think we've all got probably some story.
I mean, all we have left is just like being like, yeah, it's a boring RPG.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to overstate it, but like on the basic engine level of this game, on the way you move your party around, on the way you cannot separate your characters, on the fact that they don't even implement some of the classes. Unfortunately, this is not a funny bad game.
No.
This isn't Descent to Undermountain, which we'll play at some point. I will force these chucklefucks to play. We made a first-person D&D RPG in the Descent engine. And what could possibly go wrong?
That sounds incredible.
It's a bad game.
I had a coworker who worked with one of the guys who developed Descent.
This I must just say
this is just boring.
This game has maybe the all-time funniest PC gaming wiki page I've ever seen.
It's a storm.
It's amazing.
We have to get into this. I will say, getting this up and running, as maybe alluded to by this PC Gaming Wiki being kind of long, it's kind of a process. There's a very good chance that you're not going to be able to get this running on your computer. But I'll tell you, if you get this running, what you're going to see is something that looks startlingly like The Sims. And I think that is very charming, because I spent a lot of time playing the original Sims as a young person.
It looks nice for a 2001 game.
Yeah, it's basically that kind of let's call it Final Fantasy adjacent pre-rendered backdrops, and then kind of little low polygon model people walking around on them, exactly in the way that the Sims walked around. And I say this specifically because when I was looking for ways to get this running, there is a DirectX Voodoo abstraction layer widget that you're kind of going to need to install in most Windows.
DG Voodoo, I am well aware of it.
And the procedure for getting this running is pretty much exactly the procedure that they recommend for getting the Sims to run with this same tool. They look and feel almost identical. The theming is very different, obviously. That said, I tried every combination of the set things in DG Voodoo to get this game to work, and what I came away with is either everything is completely white on the screen except for clickable objects, which would be regular color, or everything on the world looks okay except all of the 3D objects are nearly transparent wire meshes.
Oh, I found this fix for that. I have every bug listed, so I'll talk about that, but keep going.
So that's... I'm telling you, I worked through all the solutions for that bug on the PC Gaming Wiki. Didn't work for me. So all of my experience with this game is playing it in an on-fire manner for a good hour, really trying to just really juice a turnip. And then I watched YouTube playthroughs of this for a while because I could not get this running. And also, I don't fucking care. It's pretty bad. Yeah, so that was after acquiring the version that is easily available through a website, which is a pre-patched version. And this is kind of important.
If you notice, the box art I am using for this presentation has a big ol' features updated version 1.2 as a selling point.
Now, why is this so important?
Well, it turns out that, and I think Braden looked up the exact reason why this happens, in the original 1.0 release, when you uninstalled the game, it would delete system files that were system critical, causing the operating system to your computer to fail. And then you would have to reinstall Windows and basically factory default your computer. Starting with the 1.1 versions of the game, it no longer had this glitch, but there are still plenty of bugs beyond that one. But yeah, this game could kill your computer, to which I then proceeded to do some research. I found the said Canadian website. It's Canadian, right? Yeah. Said Canadian website verified that it was the 1.0 version of the game. And I found a Windows. I mean, this laptop was pretty old. It was a Windows 10 laptop that I have not used in quite some time. I installed the game onto that Windows laptop. Then I uninstalled it without the patch. And I can verify, regardless of the version of Windows, whatever it attaches to those system files, it just finds those system files and it deletes them still to this day. So I have officially killed this laptop, which I was not going to use. I was actually going to send it to a electronic recycling facility. But yeah, I killed a computer using this video game. Now,
what did you learn?
I learned that this game has even more bugs than you can shake a stick at. So there's the invisible object and transparent character glitch that Jeff mentioned, where you have to not only install DG Voodoo 2, you have to unpack it, copy it into a specific D3D file, and then find the x86 file, and then copy 3 files into that folder in a particular order. And then you have to set the aspect ratio manually using a general tab from full screen to 4:3. Oh, by the way, this is one of those games that is run in 4:3, and if you have a monitor that is not
it does
bad,
800 by 600, and it doesn't do any other resolutions.
Nope.
It's like Temple OS.
I have used DG Voodoo a lot in my adventures in old game streaming, so it's not a huge hiccup for me. But if you are not me, I could see how it might be slightly difficult.
Now, there are a couple of issues that are still, according to PC Gaming Wiki, unresolved. For example, the Constitution bug. I have to read this one because I find it very funny. I don't know how this game got past certification, but let's just read this Constitution bug. There is a bug where you permanently lose hit points after equipping an item that increases your Constitution and then de-equip that item from your character. This bug will only happen under these following circumstances. Step 1, player equips an item that brings his or her Constitution to an uneven number. Step 2, player then gets a permanent Constitution increase, e.g., from one of the attribute increasing barrels, which puts his Constitution to an even number and thus increases the modifier. This will now increase most con-aligned values, like saving throws, but not the max HP because the interaction with con-increasing items is bugged by default. Step 3. Now, if the con-increasing item is unequipped, the game will subtract the hit points because the con modifier has gone down, and it accidentally will apply the drop of your base buff, even though the HP had never gone up previously. The player is now stuck with permanently less HP for the rest of the game. The solution is unequip the Constitution increasing items before attribute improvement and level up, restore your hit points using a save editor, or purposefully find your way into an area in which you get level drain. Because, again, 3rd edition has level drain. It's
a bizarre thing. And, reading some stuff from the time, from 2001, Deathlock, an old school name in the PC RPG space, is very much like, this is the buggiest game since Arcanum. And you're like, wow, that's crazy. Arcanum must be really buggy.
It's kind of important that you guys even got past the first dungeon, because a game-breaking glitch that has never been resolved, which is the relocking door problem, oftentimes causes people to give up in the first dungeon. So sometimes doors in the dungeon will relock after you had previously opened them with a key, but keys are a finite resource, and they're gone after their use. So you can just lock yourself into a section of the first dungeon and be stuck and have to redo the entire of your progress.
It's really good. I'm putting out a public challenge right now to the internet. Listen, hi internet. It's me, Braden Arbitrary Water Redacted. I know you people are fucking sickos. There are individuals who are trying to remake Sonic the Hedgehog 2006 as like a playable video game. You know, games like Temple of Elemental Evil, which is basically the actual realization of this game, have, extensive fan modding communities. Where is my fan mod for this? Where's my fan fix patch for this game? Someone on God's green earth, on this planet, within the last year and a half, has released a restoration mod for Tomb Raider Angel of Darkness, which tries to finish that game for the developers, basically. I'm saying there are people out there with the means and the know-how and the unbreakable insanity to try and make old games that are good or bad run good. And I challenge you, upon this day, be that person for Pool of Radiance, Ruins of Mr. Nor. You probably won't make the game good, but you'll make me happy, which is the most important thing. Because the game's shit. Like, even without the bugs, it's just a very slow...
Such a mindless and slow game. Like I said, it's structured as if it's running AD&D, but it has this combat system.
But it has 3rd edition rules.
And, it has multi-classing, kind of?
Yes.
But it's the wrong multi-classing.
It's AD&D style multi-classing where you can only pick 2 classes, and for some ungodly reason the level cap in this game is 16. So if you were to grind, you could get 2 classes to level 16, which is not how it works in 3rd edition.
No, then that's it.
This game also has multiplayer.
good, but there's like no exotic weapon. Like there are parts of third edition that they just didn't have enough time to include.
Exotic weapons are shit.
I'm not even saying that as like a definitive answer, but I'm just saying that like there are aspects of third edition that they just didn't have time to add into this game that would have made sense with what they ended up doing.
Like, I think the fundamental and biggest flaw of this game is that it somehow fails to have the strengths of either second or third edition, and instead has the flaws of both. It is absolutely like it's an abominable half-step creature gasping for life, going, oh, if only it had Thaco, but instead it just has an underdeveloped set of ascending armor class.
I liked virtually nothing about it, like at all, up to and including the cutscene at the beginning and the way the menus look.
The music is also not very good.
The individual responsible for the music, whose name is now gone, they were kind of in-house for the most part, as I recall, for Stormfront, and
Do you like MIDI loops that are 10 seconds long? Because that's the combat music.
Yeah, I almost feel bad, but I'm
just saying, in the realm of D&D games from this era, you have some certified bangers. You have Michael Honig's score for Baldur's Gate 1 and 2. You have Jeremy Sewell, a man who is definitely not a horrible person, doing, Neverwinter Nights. And then you just have 10-second MIDI loops.
Yeah, and all in service of a thing that is, as you said, worst of both worlds, and that eventually does just evolve into like, yo, do you like the way that the random dungeons in Diablo look and feel when they're just sort of big?
Right.
Even though it's a fixed dungeon?
Yeah, just enormous, empty, endless. If you liked the Arcanum dungeon design, not the worlds, but the actual dungeons, check out Ruins of Myth Draenor, because it sucks.
Here, you know me. You two know me. We've been friends for many, many a year. And you know that the prospect of a new mediocre CRPG from the early 2000s that I have not played, it's like a trigger. It's like a mechanism.
You got to have it.
I'm like, oh, I need to play this. You don't need to play this. I experienced it. I'm glad I played it. I think it's very funny. This is the first D&D game we've covered for this podcast.
Should be the only one. That's what I'm saying.
But this can do better.
This ain't it.
You can do better with literally any other D&D game released between the years 1998 to, let's say, 2009, because that's when I think the last Neverwinter Nights 2 expansion came out.
God, are you really saying that this ranks above or below Demon's Stone?
I mean, Demon's Stone isn't great. Dragon Shard, the RTS that takes place in Eberron, is like infamously also kind of a mediocre game.
How do you feel about this versus the film Dungeons and Dragons with Jeremy Irons?
I think the film Dungeons and Dragons is one of the funniest things it's one of the greatest comedies.
Yeah, look, if you have not seen that movie, you should check it out. It's all right.
Jeremy Irons.
Ray Liotta.
Is Ray Liotta in that movie too?
Yeah.
I thought he was in the Dungeon Siege movie.
Oh, I might be mixing things up. Sorry.
Yeah, Jeremy Irons is the villain in the Dungeons and Dragons movie, and he is not giving a fuck. He is just going maximum ham.
Check cleared.
Please look forward to the new D&D movie starring Chris Pine this year.
Could be worse. It could be the other.
Could be worse. Could be one of the other lesser Chris's.
I'm told the church he's involved in won't let him play D&D. Anyway, let's rank this and move on.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is it time to rank it?
Don't play this game.
Yeah. We all played this game for what? I played this game for literally like 3 to 4
I
hours.
progressed far enough to interact with a man in a wagon, with the
Okay.
horrible invisible transparency, and then I watched about as far as the first actual dungeon stuff, and I was like, you know what?
You weren't missing much.
And I'm a little afraid to uninstall this because I installed it on my main PC. But here's the thing.
Now you're fine.
It's probably fine. But in the event that it does, it's just my excuse to put Linux on here finally. So we're good. We're gonna put this on a list. The list, as mentioned, is bit.ly/OTDE rank. So let's see. At number 5, we have Quest for Glory 1. So you want to be a hero. So, and then below that is Ogre Battle 64 Person of Lordly Caliber.
Yeah, these are
I
comparable.
would take, I think below Grandia 2 for sure. Probably above Quest for Glory. This probably goes above
yeah,
Quest
I
for
mean,
Glory.
I really like
understand
talking
your
to that
goof.
the pun-given tree man. Okay, so I say we start from the bottom.
I think this is a better game than Virtual Highlight.
Wait, Virtual Highlights
No,
our lowest game?
He's
No,
just saying very
I think this
crazy
is a better game
stuff.
than Unlimited Saga.
Yeah,
I think this is a better game than Aiden Chronicles or Secret of Stars or Virtual Highlight.
I think this is cousins with Aiden Chronicles. It's a better pairing than the other ones.
I think that I would put this above Aiden Chronicles.
Yes.
I would
think
put
that
this above Secret of the Stars.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
the fucking... Okay, right. Yeah, the horrible...
Secret of the Stars
The
is
two-character
like
thing.
the two-party
brazenly
thing is
incompetent.
bad. Actively unfun.
I don't know. I'm broken. I like Virtual Highlight. I might like that game more than Draken.
Now you are on angel
Yeah.
dust.
Listen,
It's not very good.
friend, listen, I love Pandemonium and his videos. Check him out if you haven't. But Virtual Highlight is an RPG made in a golf engine.
And it
I
shows.
like golf.
Like
Yeah, playing that game's abominable. It's like very bad. Like as soon as you touch it, anything good about it like breaks and never repairs. Like if you really, I think this probably goes above Virtual Hype. I think you got it in one there because like if you simply must have a kind of 3rd edition PC dungeon crawl thing, you can basically
this
get
seems
that here.
functional with all of the patches. To be clear, but it doesn't take advantage of any of the things that make a 3rd edition game fun, a dungeon crawler fun.
Yeah, if you're gonna make a
Like
3rd
it is
edition
probably
game,
technically better.
just if you're gonna make a 3rd edition game, just make it gameplay focused and just let people have their Dragon Ball Z power fantasies.
So you're saying if people wanted a 3rd edition game, let's say, they should just fuck around with Neverwinter Nights modules like a goddamn American.
I think Tome of Elemental Evil gets you most of the way there too, honestly.
Yes. Also, Temple of Elemental Evil is the actual realization of this game. That game has all of the weird shit you want.
God,
That game has trip
we're gonna
attacks.
rank the entire Troika oeuvre, aren't we?
Yep. Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I'd be okay with that.
100%.
But anyways, so we're gonna put this above Virtual Highlight. What is above Virtual
Draken.
Highlight? Just for
Draken.
reference. I'm not putting this above
I know,
Draken.
and that
I think Draken is funnier.
it is. So that's okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and put Dungeons and Dragons. That's or that's the
So wait,
the
can
fancy
we, can we definitively say
I
that
believe the style guide for D&D is you need the
the ampersand. Dungeons and Dragons : Forgotten Realms :
so we are
Pools-
officially saying
Pool of Radiance.
that Pool of Radiance, Ruins of Mithranor, by our science, by our metrics, is both the worst and the best D&D game.
Yeah, that we have covered. Who's Baldur? Baldur's what now? Eye of the what?
Mask of the Betrayer who?
What?
I don't know how I did formatting. Oh, is it okay? I need to figure out how to do this. So, Dungeons and Dragons: Forgotten Realms, Pool of Radiance 2, Ruins of Mithranor version 1.4 is the new number 32 on the list, right between Draken and Virtual Highlight.
I wasn't expecting it to be this low, but
Congratulations,
honestly,
Stormfront.
I think this game is has commits the unforgivable sin
Being bad and boring.
of being boring. It's not funny bad. It's not like interesting bad. Everything interesting about the game is outside of it. It's just kind of a boring, like, mediocre dungeon crawl that doesn't use any of the things that make D&D fun or dungeon crawls fun. Play Temple of Elemental Evil, you fucking savage.
Yes.
Like I've been telling you to do for the past decade.
If you dare me to have a good time, Braden, I'll have a good time.
We're at the end. We've made it. It's time to pick the next thing. It's time to pick the next thing. We have a list here. I want to be super clear. We got a nomination from community member Borgmaster for Megami Tensei, the original one. Did anyone else put a community thing that I'm missing on here?
I don't think so.
I think we're above board. So we're gonna do this draw then, using everyone's favorite random number generator based on atmospheric noise. 12 options.
Donate $3 to subject us to torture.
Survey says.
Oh no!
I don't like that. I don't like that sound.
Just kidding. It's a good witch. It actually landed on number 12. So we're gonna go with Digital Devil Story Megami Tensei for the Nintendo
Fuck
family.
yeah. Fuck yeah.
Good ass.
Okay,
I'm gonna watch
fine
the
with
OVA.
this, but yeah, we have to debate this. Borgmaster also said that he wanted us to do a double feature and cover the OVA, which for
And
those of
the
you that don't
novels.
know, that OVA is dog
Yeah,
shit.
it's really bad. I love it. It's really bad though, but I love it.
Listen.
Do you want to cover it separately or do you want to cover it together?
I mean, we don't rank it, but I think we cover it together.
Here's the thing. That's as you'll learn listening to that
The
episode.
1980s in Japan. Have you
bubble
ever played
economy.
Yakuza 0?
That original Famicom game is pretty slight. So it's like, hey, do you like grid-based dungeon crawlers? They made one. It's
This one has Satan in it.
There's not a whole heck of a lot going on. So like we could talk about that for 12 minutes and then talk about the book and the OVA and the weird publishing history of that game, I guess.
Yeah.
God, that OVA is maybe one of the most hideous looking things. If
you dive into 80s anime OVAs, you're gonna end up in weird, fucked up places.
I'm just saying
Megami
that
Tensei is no exception.
The Ninja
Because
Gaiden anime is actually
infinite
quite
cocaine
good.
money
Yeah,
in the 80s.
just
Infinite. Just once again, Yakuza 0, like Kiryu just punching people in the street and money flying out of them.
God, you should...
And all of that money was being used to produce video-only anime episodes, some of which were porny, some of which were not, all of which were the idea of, hey, do you want to buy these 3 episodes of this thing for $70? You do, because it's the 80s in Japan, and you're wealthy.
It's just the worst looking thing. Might I recommend, if you want a good, like,
Please
I
watch
genuinely
along with
mean
us.
this, is the Ninja... We might do a watch party. We should
Can
do
we
a
watch
watch party, because it's available on the airwaves.
Can we watch the Fire Emblem
for
OVA?
reasons.
Yes.
I keep trying to convince Braden we should do the Fire Emblem OVA, because technically that was America's first impressions of Fire
Can we
Emblem.
watch the Panzer
Yes,
Dragoon
okay.
OVA?
Oh, Jesus.
Can we watch all of the OVA? You know, there's probably a bunch of Sakura Taisen
Jeff,
stuff.
what if you watched Legend of the Galactic Heroes, the best OVA?
Yes, filth.
130-something episodes.
We're already...
Legitimately one of the best anime I have ever watched.
I guess we're actually... I was about to say we're watching a certain show for another show, but right, I said we're reading a book instead.
MILF Manor,
so...
yes.
Yeah, there's some Final Fantasy anime out there, for those curious.
Yeah, we're gonna try
An
and watch
unlimited
one
amount.
Oh yeah, but God, okay. You got to keep those cards close to the chest. So yes, Megami Tensei will be the next episode. That'll be coming up eventually. Sorry about the delay and last little gap.
I got COVID.
And then I was in the nation of Canada for a whole week, and I didn't want to do any work while I was there. So we are getting back on the wagon, this old deep wagon.
Have we said when we're going to record our Game of the Year stuff? Have we announced that? Sorry to
Yeah.
drop that. I just
Well,
realized that. We're
Seeing
coming
as
up
we're
with it.
nearly 2 months after the other Game of the Year show, you know what? I'll briefly say this. I think we just need to do a Hall of Fame induction. I think we do I think we take out
A couple of awards, superlatives.
but I think
Not a
we
lot.
tack those on at the end of the next episode. And we just look at everything we did in the last year
Yeah.
and just literally have 3 things. I want 3 awards. And then going forward, I just want to do them in the main award show where we just steal the microphone and be like,
Yeah.
hey, look, we realize that the other people involved in Deep Listens are normal, and that's nice, but Might and Magic 6 deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. God damn it, that game was good. It's not winning anything else.
Can we do a Hall of Shit?
That's the rest of this
Yeah,
podcast.
what do you think we've done here? Details, TBA, on the next installment of Off the Deep End. And if you're curious about what I meant by that, first of all, let me know what I said, because I already forgot. But you can remind me at inquiries@LOL. Or you could remind me with money, which can go to patreon.com/deeplistens, write a comment that says, hey, here's a reminder to do a thing that you said. And if you do that, we'll also be sure to get you into a Discord where we all hang out. And people hang out on Twitch. What are you guys twitching in the near future?
I played Tomb Raider.
Oh,
The original.
like the PC port of?
the
Are
Tomb
you
Raider.
using one of those new engine sort of things? Nice.
Yes. So it runs at playing that game at 1440p.
You see every polygon, and I mean every.
Yeah, all 5 of them.
Put an eye out with those things.
Honestly, that game's okay.
Yeah. I'm on a quest
And
to
then
play
Chris is
every
playing bad
free
adventure
game.
games.
No, I'm playing every free adventure game that's available on GOG.
Meanwhile, I'm playing good adventure games. By the way,
How's Teen Agent
for those of
treating
you
you?
who haven't followed,
I finished Teen Agent. I found that to be one of the least offensive and more tolerable games, unlike Lure of the Temptress or Flight of the Amazon
Yeah.
Queen
They made some choices.
or
I
goddamn.
played Unavowed. It was a good adventure game.
Man, I wish I liked Beneath a Steel Sky more than I
Beneath
did.
the Steel Sky looks cool, but I've tried playing that.
It looks cool. And then the story completely falls apart when it decides that, we have to tell a story. And the story is robot-human hybrid. And then also the last floor of Beneath the Steel Sky, where it's just like this walking parody of, oh, look at all these Richards. The rich people are just having a fun time. Funny.
I love
commentary.
cyberpunk parodies of rich people.
Okay, this before we go, I have to ask you, what's your stance on the Shiva?
It's fine.
Yeah.
It's good.
I
At some
It's
point, I'll play
conceptually
it.
played that
okay.
one a long time ago, and I enjoyed it.
I think Wajidai makes and publishes
Good
interesting
games.
adventure games.
Cool. Makes me feel good about my taste. Shout out to SuperSex420 for providing some theme music halfway. You can find this and other great tracks on bandcamp.com. Just look for SuperSex420. Hey, see you next time, and remember, there's no such thing as cheating in magical, whatever this was called, Runes of Myth Draenor, and because you actually kind of have to cheat if you fuck up the Constitution. You just
The World
Open
of
it.
Toriel,
What's
created by Ed Greenwood.
one more joke? What's a rogue's favorite medium armor? Hide.
Okay, that's pretty
bye. This episode of Off the Deep End was recorded and edited on the traditional and ancestral territory of the Dishqualiapsh or Nisqually people, who have lived on and stewarded these lands and waters since times immemorial.